I'm now going to read an article from a publication called Metro. An article titled, "It's Time to Come Clean. All Men Are Awful." Sorry about that.
Oh god. Let's have a look. Huh. Looks like someone torpedoed this article. Must be even worse than I thought. Anyway, carry on.
This is penned by a gentleman named Andy Hill. There's a picture of a man wearing a t-shirt with an arrow on it pointing upwards, saying, "I'm with Jackass."
Well, that bodes well. Maybe it's a self-portrait.
Yes. Remember that old saying, "The more I know, the less I understand"? If you've studied, or travelled, or merely survived past the age of about 19, you'll know what I'm getting at.
Well, sure. Understanding, or perceived understanding, is easy when you only have a handful of data points to integrate with each other and interpret. The more complex the system, the harder it is to be able to construct a comprehensible mental model of it. The more you learn about any given system, the more complex your model has to be, and if you have any degree of intelligence or humility, you'll realize that even if your model is complete, it's so complex that you can't necessarily predict or even discern all of the connections, feedback loops, and correlations it implies, and you're essentially working with goo. Poke this bit over here, something over there does something completely unexpected because of a sequence of events you couldn't possibly have anticipated. Of course, most people don't like complexity because it implies uncertainty. We evolved to crave certainty to such a degree that we will often actively avoid any information that introduces complexity because complexity makes decisions more difficult to make. And for most of our history, our lives or our reproductive success often rested on our ability to make decisions quickly and then fully commit to them. So basically, what I'm saying here is humans really don't like to know any more than they need to.
Whenever I presume I've mastered any discipline, say making friends or sports betting, life inevitably socks me in the kisser with a giant sloppy nope, and I'm yet again floored by my own boundless ignorance.
And I shall prepare to be floored by your boundless ignorance too. We're in this together.
Except, that is, in the one arena of life I feel I understand only too well. To wit, the more I learn about men, the more I'm convinced we're all effing dreadful.
Well, perhaps you're not allowing enough complexity into your perceptions of men. Perhaps you don't want to know anything about men other than what's trending on the Me Too hashtag. I want you to perform an exercise, Andy. I want you to look at the things closest to you. Your keyboard, your laptop screen, the pixels on it, the little icon that shows you're connected to the internet, the pen you keep handy, and the note paper you sometimes jot things down on. Mostly men did that. Those things were invented by men, built by men, and are maintained by men. Brought to you by men. Now I want you to look a few feet away from you, at your office chair, your desk, your shelves, the walls and ceiling of your office, the component parts involved: iron, copper, magnesium, aluminum, nylon, polyester, medium density fiberboard, drywall mud, primer, paint, electrical switches and outlets, power bars, coaxial cable, plastics, a modem, a router, your smartphone, double-paned windows with argon gas used to insulate them, door hinges, doorknobs, the mechanism you use to adjust the height of your chair. Men mostly did that. Now go to the window and look outside. No human excrement running in gutters down the street. Potholes are filled, snow's plowed, sidewalks made of poured concrete or pavers, trees planted on the boulevard between the sidewalk and the roadway, owned and maintained by the city you live in. Well, by men employed by that city. Street lamps that make it safe to walk at night, not just safe from assailants, but safe from tripping over something and doing a faceplant. Look at every brick on the skin of every single building around you. Look at the cars on the street and the universal traffic lights and signs that keep them moving in order and not careening into each other. Look at the styrofoam bowl of ramen noodles you added boiling water to and are waiting to be ready to eat. Look at the kettle you used to heat that water and the tap that dispensed that water, and think of the incredibly complex system of pipes and pumps and purifiers that delivered it to you on demand, just with a turn of your hand. Men mostly did that too.
First and foremost, of course, for the obvious reason.
Ah, yes. I'm guessing that men's sexuality is pathological. They find attractive women attractive. They want to have sex with women they find attractive. They actively seek sex with women they're attracted to, because if they don't, it's not like those women are going to do it. Actively seeking sex is work, and when you do it, you risk rejection. Women don't like work, and they don't like rejection. For the most part, men just learn to live with it.
If #MeToo taught us anything, it's that men always want to get their dicks wet, and the only thing holding us back is that we usually aren't powerful enough to just get away with it.
Or, perhaps, if one were capable of complexity of thought, it taught us that people who actively seek power aren't always the people who can be trusted to use it responsibly. You ever wonder if maybe there are some people who climb the ladder to positions of power and status by stepping on the heads of people who are kind, upright, conscientious, considerate, and moral? Take Weinstein as an example. Yes, he had a reputation among the whispermongers of Hollywood as a scumbag who routinely abuses his power to sexually exploit women. But he also had a reputation for physically assaulting men who angered him and committing career sabotage against people of both sexes he felt had crossed him. Not every leader is a dictator or a tyrant, Andy. But among those who end up in positions of power and leadership, there will be a disproportionate number of people who wanted and actively sought that power and chased it until they got it, because they really, 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 really wanted to be in charge and to shit on the people underneath them. You, my friend, are perhaps putting the cart before the horse here. You're looking for a clean and uncomplicated narrative. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, for men anyway. The reality is that for every Harvey Weinstein who was almost certainly corrupt, or at least corruptible, before he obtained power, there are 100 or 1,000 men you never hear about in the news. Men who play fair and don't exploit others, men who sacrifice for their women and their families and their communities, and even for complete strangers, men who have their feet firmly planted in the fertile and nurturing earth of human dignity and decency, men who fix people's toilets and haul away people's garbage and invent new technologies and make medical advances and empty bedpans in nursing homes at 3 a.m. and volunteer at the local SPCA rehabilitating and rehoming abandoned dogs.
Give a man status. He'll generally assume it's his right to push his luck.
How is this a gendered thing, Andy? Give anyone status and they'll implicitly understand that they can get away with things someone without status can't. It's all just a matter of whether they're willing to do it.
Like practically all my friends, I used to bloody adore Louis C.K.
Ooh, let me guess. You loved the time he completely erroneously said that men's sexism and violence is the biggest threat to women, even though motor vehicle accidents, cancer, and a half dozen or more other things are bigger threats to women. Or maybe you loved the time he told you that if he got into a time machine and went to any point in history, any place in the world, his being white and male would make him impervious to any sort of unpleasantness. You know, when he essentially said that if a ginger baldy materialized in 4th century Nigeria, or Eastern Europe during Genghis Khan's conquests, or in Turkey during the Ottoman Empire, he'd be just fine, yo. His whiteness and his maleness would totally keep his head attached to his neck, because that's just how powerful whiteness and maleness is, don't you know?
I identified with his coal-black humor and unvarnished candor.
Too bad you lack the knowledge you were alluding to earlier. Of what worth is unvarnished candor when the entire premise of the assertions and arguments is faulty? Of what worth is coal black humor when that humor is based on a toddler's simplistic version of reality?
Because I see and cherish those aspects within myself. What else do we have in common then, I wonder?
I don't know. You ever whip your dick out in front of your female colleagues, Andy? You ever say that their consent to your whipping your dick out was meaningless because as a white male you had power over them? What size of hair shirt do you wear, Andy? Maybe you and Louis C.K. have that in common.
There's a picture of a gentleman being some kind of slob. My take from #MeToo is that however erudite or successful or smart a man is, underneath we're all just grimy little wanking bonobos.
First thing, wanking is generally a morally neutral act since all it involves is a guy in his own hand. Second thing, this entire article sounds a lot like projection. And third thing, grimy little wanking male bonobos are what happens when females call all the shots. Just saying.
The only difference is some of us can, just sometimes, control it, and the majority of us can't.
Oh, and you are one of the rare specimens of masculinity who can control his terrible, horrible, no good, really bad impulses and urges, right? You're the one good man, yo. The 98th percentile, at least. The majority of men couldn't ever hold power and behave responsibly. I'd applaud your ability to toot your own horn by dissing all other men, Andy, except there's just too many other men doing the exact same thing for it to be anything other than boring now. Might want to get a new shtick.
I wish male dreadfulness was but a minor, embarrassing subset that we could roll our eyes about and blame on Trump.
Oh, I'm sure you'd love to blame it all on Trump.
If anything, that prick is the poster boy for it.
The poster boy for what? Locker room talk and trying to get laid by taking women furniture shopping? Insinuating that women in general are attracted to high-status men? Really?
He embodies the unbridled male, the ultimate self-serving specimen.
Unlike you, who are not acting in your own interests at all. This article isn't the epitome of, I'm a good man unlike all those other men. It's not at all the epitome of, men who think and act like me are good, unlike those guys over there who support a different political party.
Bet you anything he would have ditched his third trophy wife by now, had he not accidentally been crowned the snarling, priapic alpha in whose shadow we all cower.
Accidentally? Really? And do you really cower under him, Andy? I mean, what are you afraid of, exactly? If he's everything you erroneously think he is, then as a white male, you're set for life. Also, I really like how you describe Ivana, Marla, and Melania as trophies. Talk about objectification of women.
And hey, he might even destroy the world. And for what? A dick-measuring contest with another high-status blowhard.
Huh. You know, I just recently read that South Korean President Moon Jae-in recently praised Trump for the role he played in reestablishing meaningful dialogue between North and South Korea. Trump campaigned on a platform of smoothing the bumpy relationship between the U.S. and Russia and has repeatedly said he'd rather have Russia as a friend than an enemy. You know, Hillary, on the other hand, campaigned on the platform of enforcing a no-fly zone over Syria, Russia's ally and a region in which Russia has massive monetary and political interest. I wonder how many Russian jets she could get away with shooting down before Putin started to get pissed off.
Ever notice how few women have ever been involved in nuclear standoffs?
Yeah, And how many women have ever had the opportunity to preside over one? You know, given that nuclear standoffs were a product of the Russia-US Cold War, which ended in 1991. Now, interestingly enough, it was two men who presided over the beginning of the end of the Cold War and the shredding of the Iron Curtain. Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, and American President Ronald Reagan, who, I might add, was a Republican. And the deal was eventually signed, sealed, and delivered under George H.W. Bush, another male, and yes, another Republican.
Or fights in general.
Oh, please. Do I really need to break out the list of warmongering female leaders? Fucking forget it. I'll just link you this paper by the National Bureau of Economics that found that Europe's queens have historically been 27% more likely to wage war than Europe's kings, and more likely to amass new territory via conquest. I suppose we should all be grateful in light of that none of these queens had a nuclear arsenal at her disposal.
Women can be dreadful too, sure. But all the truly cancerous issues facing our world can legitimately be blamed on men.
You know, if men are the only people who've historically been given the opportunity to do important things, which is what most feminists seem to believe, then who else was gonna screw things up? I mean, who else was there? On the other hand, we have insulin, vaccines, alternating current, the internal combustion engine, light bulbs, and modern sewer and water treatment systems, all thanks to men too. I mean, you can't blame men for everything and then withhold credit for all of the good things men did.
And I genuinely find this hard to write.
No, you don't. There are plenty of men out there like you who find these kinds of articles very easy to write.
Because I'm not in the slightest self-loathing.
Of course you're not. You've already established that you're one of those very rare unicorns, a man who isn't a grimy, wanking bonobo. Well, at least not all the time.
And most of my heroes are men.
Because most heroes are men. Yeah, there you go. I said it.
I guess my point is we can do better.
Better than what, Andy? Better than Weinstein? I have news for you. Most men do better than Weinstein. They just don't make the news. When was the last time you saw a trending article that read as follows?
Breaking news. Minneapolis chef and father of 3, Brian Smith, celebrated after 35 consecutive years of decent and considerate behavior. Sous chef Lisa Hidalgo told reporters, "He's just a really sweet guy, never yells at the staff, leads by example, and he's always got an ear open when one of us has a problem. When I started here, I was a high school dropout who could barely use a French knife, but he had faith in me, was a great mentor, and now I'm second in command." Smith's wife, Barbara, had similar things to say. "Sometimes, when he gets home, he's so tired from work he forgets to put his clothes in the hamper, but he makes up for it by getting up with the kids in the morning so I can have my coffee and some alone time. Marriage is always a give and take, and he's not perfect by any stretch, but then neither am I. He's our rock, you know?" We spoke to widowed neighbor Jane Sebastian, 80, who told us, "When it snows overnight, I just look out the window in the morning and he's already cleared my walks. When my Bob died of cancer last year, he brought over a hot meal for me every night for a week. It's not every old bird who gets to eat gourmet food cooked just for her by a professional chef. You just never have to ask with him. He sees that someone needs help and he's right there. It's just the kind of guy he is." An extensive background search on Smith revealed no complaints from women relating to sexual assault or harassment.
Yeah, I highly doubt you'll see that kind of article anywhere but The Onion.
Possibly, maybe, it would help if men characterized their inborn douchiness as a sort of addiction problem or mental health issue.
Inborn douchiness?
Sorry to be a bore, but right now I'm about a fortnight into dry January. Already the longest I've gone without a drink since, 1998.
I've known a lot of people who've quit drinking or doing drugs. Often they're left with an addiction deficit, and they pick up a less life-disrupting habit to fill in the gap. Food or caffeine or smoking, or some combination thereof. I'm guessing your compensatory addiction is virtue signaling. Public demonstrations of moral superiority can give a guy quite the rush, I've heard.
Doing so has made me more clear-eyed about my own issues, among them an unforeseen strain of what you might call toxic masculinity.
Ah, I see. You are writing about yourself here. But let me guess. Now that the demon liquor has been exorcised and denounced, you've seen the light and the way, embraced the goddess of feminism, allowed the power of Me Too into your heart, and you are a changed man. a born-again good guy on a crusade to atone for his past sins by bashing other men and their masculinity. I get it, Andy. Only thing that loves company more than misery is sin. If you can implicate and indict all men as fellow sinners, well, you don't have to feel like such a shit for whatever it is you believe you've done. I was just going along with the program, doing what all the guys do. Wasn't really me. I was born this way and I really couldn't help it. I hope you realize that drunks of both sexes do shitty things, Andy. That's why 12-step programs require you to make amends with everyone you wronged over the course of your addiction. I also hope you realize that all kids, male and female, start out as adorable little sociopaths. From the day they slide out of their mothers covered in goo and blood, they are ravenous, insatiable, selfish, squalling bundles of incessant demand with zero fucks to give regarding anyone else's needs or feelings or priorities. During the first 4 to 6 years of life, most of them, male and female, learn to regard others as fellow human beings whose feelings and needs matter every bit as much as their own. They learn how to empathize and they become able to experience compassion. This article, however, was in no way written to make amends or to promote compassion and understanding. All it does is make excuses and point a finger at all those other worse offenders, all 3.8 billion minus one of them. Andy, if you recognize yourself in the Weinsteins of the world, you have no one to blame but your parent or parents and yourself. It's not your biology, Andy, and it's not the patriarchy either. It's just you.
Bum bum bum. Maybe if men took a similar self-care approach to our native awfulness, laying off the twattery for a month, we might learn some powerful truths.
Native awfulness, inborn douchiness, original sin, carried solely by the Y chromosome.
Don't be a C star 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 February. Has a nice ring to it, eh? I honestly can't tell if that's cock or cunt. Is that where you're going with this?
Funny thing, Andy, I learned that every month was Don't Be a Cunt month all the way back before kindergarten. So did most of the men and boys and women and girls I know. If that's a lesson you never learned, then you're not a typical man, Andy. You're a failed one.
There appears to be a poll here. Are men just the worst? The options are pretty much kinda and yeah.
And in honor of all the men out there who aren't like you, I'm going to close with some clips of men doing what men do. Have a nice day.
This article appears to have been taken down since the weekend. I wonder why.